What will it be? Who will hear it?
I think I've been like not even purposely, but now I want it to be purposeful. Just like, I don't know, listening to less shit about what's going on in the news the last week, even though I'm still aware of too much, more than I want to be. It like reached a real fever pitch yesterday where I was just like, fuck all this shit. God damn it. Why? I'm really tired of cramming this fucking bullshit into my brain. But I don't know. It was like a moment, but yeah, I guess so. I mean, I guess we'll talk about some of this stuff.
Okay,
but
the soup comes in 6 gallons of this. It weighs almost 50 pounds. I know you don't want to hear this, but I want to tell you, you're going to dream Jim Bakker on TV telling you, get ready. And you're saying, oh my God, why didn't I order something? I'm going to eat some more of this if you're not careful. Oh. Oh, good. Oh my God. You didn't have lunch, right?
Wow.
This food is so good. It passes the official Mexican test. This is Mexican food that real life Mexicans approve of. You know, this is not gringo food. This is good food, and it is unbelievable. One of the things we've done around here, we stick them under coffee tables and end tables. You just stack them up and then put a cloth over them.
Yeah.
Or get a piece of, cardboard or a piece of plywood, and you make a top, and then you just stack this food. You could have your whole living room with end tables and coffee tables made out of food buckets. Just do it.
Yeah.
This power goes out, and there's no trucks running, and the EMP bomb or whatever they're talking about for these last day events. This 2-gallon bucket of packs of coffee,
Yes.
you could trade them for whatsoever you want.
That's it.
You could probably get a new car.
The Bible says they're going to eat their arms. The Bible says they're going to eat their babies. Then it says they're going to eat their children. That's what people do when they get hungry. We have the plan, But the bartering, like the food that we send out, those packets of food are
Just
going to
the
be more
packet.
valuable than gold. I want to tell you something. There's coming a day where the gold's not going to be valuable. Because if you can't eat it, it's not going to be valuable. I mean, there's certain things. I don't want to be crude, but I'm going to be anyway. I mean, toilet paper is going to be worth a lot of money. And then you have the potatoes, soup, that heavy. And then we have bananas. We have the chocolate, pudding for dessert.
Right.
We use it for, we bake cakes. We got enough stuff to bake a cake now. And the bread, you can just put this on your bread. The bread is so sweet. You can add a little more sugar to that bread, and you got cake. You got a morning cake, I'll tell you that, a coffee cake. And you put that chocolate on top. You can have parties when the world's coming apart.
Come on, people, and get the junk, de-junk your house. Are you hearing me at all? Oh, yeah.
And get up and dance a little.
Wow.
I love summertime. I've got burgers made of beans. They're never fried. Saba chips and salsa to keep me warm way deep inside. Oh yeah, I guess you'd say, Jim and Lori, help me be prepared today for end times. I'm talking about end times. Oh, I've got powdered food for a stormy day. Beets and spinach and blueberry and strawberries. Filtered water from Seychelles to take the poisons away. I like that too much. I guess as you'd say, Jim and Lori, help me be prepared today for end times. Oh, these end times, end times.
He walked out in the gray light and stood, and he saw for a brief moment the absolute truth of the world. The cold, relentless circling of the intestate earth. Darkness implacable. The blind dogs of the sun in their running. The crushing black vacuum of the universe. And somewhere 200 animals trembling like ground foxes in their cover. Borrowed time and borrowed world and borrowed eyes with which to sorrow it.
And lo, for the earth was empty of form, and void, and darkness was all over the face of the deep, and we said, look at that fucker dance.
Welcome to Heat Death of the Universe, a podcast that believes that now, more than ever, is the time to stand up and advocate for prostate cancer's right to defend itself. Do you condemn Biden's terrorist prostate or not? Yeah. Prostate cancer's defense of itself has resulted in some unfortunate collateral damage to his bones, but war is hell. Grow up. It is 11:18 a.m. Korea Standard Time, Saturday, May 24th, year of our Lord 2025. You are currently hearing the lungs, larynx, and lingua franca of me, Joshua. How am I not myself? Nomen mutatio. And broadcasting from the bunkered depths of the Griffith Observatory is Tim Slater-Kinney Powers Buckner. What's up, Tim?
All I will say is that from the river to his pee, the prostate shall be free. I don't believe in a two-state solution when it comes to that, but it's always nice to be on the only podcast that is willing to admit that, number one, yes, the South African white genocide is real, and number two, it's good, actually. Most podcasts pick one or the other, but we go with both to try to piss everybody off. How you doing tonight, Josh?
AC/DC, we go both ways. Doing good, doing fine, doing just all right.
It's a long way to his cock if he's gonna pass that stone. That is Joe Biden trying to piss out his cancer. How's it going?
That's how it works.
That's
how it works.
Folks, that's the only way to do it, and that's why he's not going to make it.
Well, I guess speaking of somebody just needing to do it, did you hear about this? Did you hear about this trend that I just heard about recently?
Trenda de agua? I've heard about that.
That's trending as well. Apparently, there's a thing of people on the internet, a little place I like to call the online, where people are
that's
just
on YouTube.
It's the YouTube place. It's the place on the YouTube where apparently people are saying and typing this idea of somebody just needs to do it. And apparently they're referring to the idea of unaliving in online parlance Mr. Donald Joker T is for Twisted Trump. Did you hear about this shit at all? It strikes me as really stupid, and I didn't look into it too much, but I did put it at the top here of the...
What, people just crowdsourcing assassination of Trump? Like, is this... What? This is a thing? People care about this? This sounds like when they were putting a hex on the moon, you know, when the TikTok witches were cursing the moon or whatever. Like, what the fuck? Like, this is nothing. This is not a thing to talk about.
Yeah, it's like the sentiment is, whatever. I mean, that's not going to solve any real problems, but, go for it. But
it seems like a stupid time to be doing it when it's like America is being the most like, fuck habeas corpus, fuck, we're just going to be as authoritarian as possible and just throw people's little ass in jail for no reason. Like, it's not the time to be posting like that on, white babies. You can't be saying that, you can't be talking like that. But, whatever, have fun, I guess.
Also, I could only possibly see that emboldening the MAGA nation, like, it's not gonna solve your problems, folks. It just, the whole thing struck me as like really kind of pathetic, like a pathetic display of everyone's just general impotence and inability to be the change they want to see in the world.
Right.
But yeah, there's that sweeping the nation and people doing their own little think pieces on it and how it's an expression of this time in our political, social, blah, blah, blah. But I just wanted to say, I think it's sad. And
right.
Yeah, it's just basically people, it's just like a nation crying out for someone else fix this problem. Just do something drastic. Just pull the plug on all this shit. And the best thing they can think of is to do winky, nudgy TikToks about somebody needs to, you know what I'm saying? I'm not really saying, but I'm saying.
I'm not saying, but I'm saying.
Take care of all the problems by doing one act of violence. That'll fix my life. No, it won't. What else? It's so funny how this shit feels so long ago already. But at the time, in real time, it was amusing watching Illuma, his website, basically humiliating him. His AI grok machine, basically making him look like a fool with the all this stuff about people asking Grok various questions that have nothing to do whatsoever with this idea of white genocide occurring in South Africa at the moment, but it would throw in some kind of Wikipedia style fair and balanced type ideas about the song Kill the Boer and like, actually, white genocide is very real. It's the only real genocide happening in the world right now. But then I don't know exactly how this AI stuff works, but like gradually it just started like saying, well, actually I was programmed to say this specifically on May 14th or whatever. Like there was some unauthorized change to my electronic guts, however AI works. And just basically calling out Elon Musk himself for like messing with the nature of the responses from Grok. Because yes, like Trump did this thing recently, open arms welcoming in these refugees from South Africa, the white farmers. And so I guess Musk anticipated that people would be asking Grok about this fantasy notion. The whole thing is just incredibly pathetic. To stick with the theme of people being pathetic, Elon Musk is also one of those people being pathetic.
Sure.
And seems to be like truly, I think, actually officially out of the government at this point. But, Trump still likes the money he was given by Musk. So it's not like he's completely outside of the realm of influencing the government. But at least we don't have to see him as much. Thank fucking God. He seems to be less in the news cycle than, I don't know, the first couple months of this Trump 2.0.
There's a few different, like, I don't know if you call them theories or reports or whatever. It's always so tough, to figure out, like, to parse what's what anymore. It's like, I've mentioned it a bunch and I always feel weird, like, hearkening and relating these things to like the wrestling side, but it's kind of true the way that like so much of mainstream media and just like political media has turned into like wrestling media, which is historically very bad. You would hope it would go the other way, you know? But like one of the main issues in wrestling media has been for years that like the biggest guy, the only major reporter is like kind of known to be like, he's the main historian, like news insider, news merchant, and opinion writer all in one. And then like wires get crossed and people don't like mix one thing up with the other, where it's like he'll be saying something that's like an opinion slash like how I sees it prediction, and then people will report it like it's like scoops and news. And that's happening with politics, where it's like people say stuff and then it's like, well, this is the inside dirt, and it's like, no, this is like just a theory. And it's like the Musk theories are like the timeline works out to where his title as like a special White House consultant or whatever comes to an end at the point now where like he would have to get clearance to continue working for the White House beyond the date, you know. So that's why he's like taking a back seat, because legally he can't continue unless he wants to like let them look into and dig into his dirt and stuff, right? That's like one, you know, theory. Oh, okay, and the timeline works out. Like, sure. Oh, fuck, you froze. Okay, you're back. Then there's like the you know, Tesla stock is tanking and his favorability is tanking. So Trump was like, I don't want to have this loser near me. And then also Musk is freaking out because most of his wealth is just completely built around the value of Tesla's stock. Like, his money's not real, folks. You know, it's in another house. It's not here.
And him as a brand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And him like as a figure who is like deeply unpopular and hated.
Right.
Yeah.
Is a big part of his wealth. Like his own brand and the Tesla stock is the only thing that like literally makes him like worthwhile, you know? So it's like, he's like, fuck, I gotta get out of here before I just completely screw everything up for myself. Which like, sure, yeah, like he just kind of like, that's why. And then the third most recent like theory, but it's like presented as like we got some, you know, some news to this, was that he actually had a falling out with Trump's cabinet. Like the cabinet dislikes Musk, and basically Trump got to a point where he was like, we got to have an intervention, folks. I'm not going to listen to you guys sniping around between each other like little bitches. So like, we're going to, you know, deal with this. And then like what it came to a head was just like Musk is going to leave, but everyone else is going to like hang out. But like Trump doesn't have a problem with him. Like Trump is like, Elon's still cool to me. It's just, you can't be around because my friends don't like, and all of it. I'm just like, I don't have any fucking clue. Like what thing is real? What's conjecture? What's theorized? You know what I mean? Like which thing is correct? And they seems like, I mean, it's probably a mix of everything, but if you're gonna be honest, like the most likely one is the money one, right? You know, but yeah, it's like, it's kind of like, yeah, what's gonna make the most sense is like he's fucking up the bag, so he's like, I gotta get out of here while I still got a chance to rectify something. But I don't know if that's gonna work, because yeah, people are not like just forgive and forget at this point, especially because he did some like long-term damage and it was like 100% like tagged on him, you know? Like this shit is like 100% Doge, and it's like that's Doge is just his brand or whatever. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know, but that's kind of like all of the stuff I've heard swirling around.
Yeah, there's definitely there's been a bunch of reporting on like blow-ups that happened like in the Oval Office with like that guy Besant or whatever, just screaming fuck you, which is satisfying because Elon is so hateable, and even when these other horrible demons like hate him so much, it's just like, oh god, truly nobody likes this guy. Even the most disgusting evil people on earth are like, this guy is a bridge too far even for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is satisfying to we plebes down here who got nothing else going on except our soap operas, our stories. But yeah, it's kind of like my dream to just like never have to think about Elon Musk ever again.
That'd be nice.
It's like that's what I fantasize about is him just going away forever and ever.
Hey, you want to talk about, things that people need to just do already?
Right.
I'll say that. Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah. Just take that for what it will or whatever. Yeah.
Another thing that seems like it happened a million years ago now was RFK and Trump coming out and saying they're gonna cut all pharmaceutical costs by 30 to 80%.
That seems reasonable. That variance seems logical too. Like it wouldn't just, if you were really crunching the numbers on something as big and as important as healthcare, you would definitely have like a 30 to 80% variability between the two. That seems right,
It's so funny. I mean, it's awful because people die unnecessarily because of the healthcare abomination of the United States. But I mean that was happening anyway. So
right.
We at least should be able to laugh at these fools being foolish. What else I don't feel like RFK was back in the news the last 2 weeks a few times
because he was swimming in shit water with his grandkids.
That's right. Him swimming in sewage water, which has been just condemned.
With the
you
babies.
should not swim in this area. It's like, time to bring my grandkids to the toxic quarry.
It's exactly what it was like. If you want to do that, I guess that's, it's not fine. It's actually technically illegal. You're not allowed to do it or whatever. But, I guess this is America. So you're, if you want to be stupid, we kind of give you a pass. You can be as dumb as you want or whatever. But don't bring the babies. Don't bring the babies to the shit water, man.
Yeah. Just looking at this shit, all of this news, so-called news, and
well, I don't know.
I just don't. It does have views, unfortunately, which means it is news,
legally speaking.
But I'm getting the impulse, which will tie into the main topic of today, which is prepping for doomsday. I'm getting the impulse to just crumple all this news up into a ball and throw it away and just start digging my bunker and never have to think about it again. But I don't know. Is there anything else you were itching to talk about that happened this week? It's all just taking on the tone to me of just sick, sad world. Yep, it continues to be bad. Christy Nome was being stupid, and that seemed interesting and a funny thing to clown at the time. But now that it's already, been reproduced in the news cycle and everybody's fucking YouTube channel and every podcast, whatever she does, she's stupid. She doesn't know anything. She has too much power in the United States. I don't care.
Yeah, right.
I'm doing fine, as Tom Likas might say.
Is that a Tom Likas? I don't know. I can't remember.
What is Tom?
I just remember "Blow Me Up, Tom," and then the thing where he'd be like, "The thing about women is,"
I think,
and the thing about women is that they're stupid.
The James Adomian Tom Likas would say, "I don't care." That was one of them. I'm pretty sure. And I'm doing great. Doth protesting too much about how great his life is going. Blow me up, Tom.
If you ever want to really laugh, just Google Tom Likas. Take a couple good pictures at him. He's a very interesting looking guy. He's very fun to look at. I'll say that.
I don't know that I've seen him all that much.
Take a quick look. Yeah,
Tom Likas is all about the James Adomian impersonation of him, but I think I've listened to a little of him actually speaking. And
yeah, as a SoCal person, I know him more for the real Tom than I don't even know that I've really heard a ton of the James Adomian impersonation. But
it's so good.
giving the guy a quick Google image search and taking a couple, get a gander at the pics. He's a very entertaining fellow to look at. I'll say that much.
I would say combine our recommendations and look
Yes,
at
look at the
of Tom
pictures.
Likas while listening to James Adomian on
Oh, man,
I guess
this
most
is a good
notably on Comedy Bang Bang.
This is good.
Being
These
James
pictures,
Adomian.
pictures of him with Carmen Electra. This is some good stuff right here.
I realized I said being James Adomian. I meant to say being Tom Likas.
That would be a great movie. Instead of
my
they
favorite
do like a
movie.
Yeah. Do a Being John Malkovich remake, but it's Being James Adomian. I would watch that.
Being James Adomian, being different characters. Then,
Yes.
Yeah. Now we're really onto something.
Cooking.
Being Tom Likas would be one thing, but let's talk about. I mean, basically, I'll set this up here.
This is a good. Okay, I'm sorry. Real quick. I'm sorry. I'll stop after this. This is a really good picture of Tom Likas with Ann Coulter. This is. I mean,
all right.
You got it. I'm gonna send you this one. I'll send it on the Discord chat. You got to see that. This is a good one. This is nice. Take a peek. Oh my god, it's like it's crashing out. Either way, there's a lot of good stuff here. It's the pictures of Tom Likas with women is very good. You know, in general, just pictures of him by himself are funny. But yeah, famous women, whatever. But this is top notch stuff.
Yeah, he looks like he's having a ball with Frankenstein there,
yeah.
And Coulter.
This is young. This is like young. There's no such thing as actual young pictures of young Ann Coulter. She always appears to be like 87 years old, but this is like pre-surgery Ann Coulter. She's got wonky looking eyes. That's good stuff.
I just see John Kerry.
Yeah,
she's like reporting for duty. Doom, 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 doom. And then Metallica starts playing and Tom Likas comes out. It's a whole rich gumbo of horrible people. Doomsday prepping. That is ostensibly the subject of today's episode. But for a little context, peek behind the curtain, as I was like creating whatever the outline for this episode, finding sources, things to look at, things to talk about. I guess one of the first things I did was I went back to an old episode of this podcast. That would be episode 58, I think it was, from like 4 years ago, where basically the topic was similar, but I thought it would be something interesting to revisit, considering that, I don't know, the through line in talking about politics from various angles tends to be doom. Okay. We're all doomed. Here comes the end.
Sure.
You know? So I thought, like the subculture of doomsday preppers. And in that old episode, we basically just focused on one article about this luxury doomsday bunker. And then I also watched a bunch of the reality TV series Doomsday Preppers. I think that was just the sum total of preparation, if you will, for that episode. But yeah, I thought it would be good to do a sort of sequel. And as I was like looking around the old internet, I landed on the idea of Jim Baker and his buckets, his survival food buckets. I assume you're familiar with this, Tim?
Yes, of course.
Jim and his buckets.
Reverend Jim Baker, I believe.
Yes. Reverence for the Reverend.
Give the man his respect. He earned it. He didn't spend, half an afternoon one time, 35 years ago, at an ordained minister class for you to just overlook that title.
He cried on TV. He went to jail. He was imprisoned for our sins or his sins, however you want to slice it.
I mean, we can share. It's everyone's sins, Not the money. We don't share the money. We don't share the money, but we can share the sin.
If people hadn't given him all that money, he couldn't have committed all that fraud. Think about it. That's true. Yeah. But anyway, I was going, just looking at kind of like compilation videos of him with his food buckets, and not just food buckets. He's got Bible buckets where you can get like a bucket of 24 Bibles for, when you're all hunkered down, getting ready for the apocalypse. You want to have 24 copies of the good book in a bucket. And I think he also talks about how the buckets can be turned into latrines, places to shit and
of course.
piss.
Yeah.
Tables as well. You flip that bucket upside down, you got a table.
Just, you got to remember which order you do that in. Got to make sure to do one before the other.
Or just pray, let the good Lord sort it out.
There is one thing I've always said, it's like when we get to the end times and everything is, it's the big reset, society has been stopped in its tracks due to whatever kind of, national tragedy or this and that. The one thing we won't have enough of is places to piss and shit, I'll be like, where am I supposed to piss and shit now that society doesn't exist anymore? So it is important to have buckets to do that in,
Of course. And the buckets just eat it up magically. Yeah. The stuff just disappears.
Yeah, and they turn it into food. These buckets turn your feces into food for your children.
Right. Loaves and fishes, indeed. But what this led me to, this little YouTube excursion, besides also revisiting Vic Berger's very, in my mind, classic surreal edits of Jim Bakker playing with his buckets as well, was this guy who I'd never heard of before talking about Jim Bakker's buckets on the Joe Rogan Experience back in, probably 2020, I think it was. And it was just like, 4 or 5 minute video. So I just watched that as well, see what do they got to say about Jim Bakker and his buckets. Not anything very new or exciting, although one funny part about it was that, so this guy, Bradley Garrett, I later found out his name was, he was saying, oh yeah, when I was researching my book, I watched a bunch of Jim Bakker videos, and that guy's hilarious, and basically said what you and I just kind of said, like the Bibles, the toilets, the food, the multi-purpose buckets. Isn't it funny? And he also
now that's an idea. I think I can figure out a way to convert a Bible into a toilet.
Put your mind to it. You can do anything. But this guy, I was going to say he shouted out the Vic Berger edits, which made me think, maybe this guy is cool. He's got the right cultural references or whatever.
I've only ever heard that Vic Berger is an evil rapscallion. So if the fact that he's shouting him out, that doesn't seem good. That seems bad.
But the only other notable thing about the Rogan clip was that Joe Rogan, so they're just like, whatever, typical run of the mill, like, isn't Jim Bakker and his buckets hilarious? What a crazy guy. But then Joe Rogan takes the opportunity to be like, well, yeah, but I've got a friend who he has his own kind of line of survival buckets, dehydrated food, and that's actually good stuff because it's like grass-fed elk and whatever. And he just turns it into a commercial for some other guy's fucking scam food thing, which is just like the ultimate, Rogan having no fucking self-awareness, just being a flim-flam man. But anyway, I was like, curious, who's this guy? So I looked up Bradley Garrett and saw, he wrote an entire book called Bunker, Building for the End Times, all about prepping culture, which is the thing the episode was going to be about. So I pretty quickly just bought the book after reading a little bit about it because it sounded pretty cool. And yeah, in the last 2 weeks, I've listened through it, the whole thing, twice. I was realizing, I was like, man, my attention span must be so fucked because not only do I have to listen to audiobooks to get through a whole book basically these days, more or less, but at certain points while I had some free time at work, I was I found an ebook, and I was reading along and listening at the same time to really make sure I could focus in, but also just to highlight stuff and take notes or whatever. But anyway, and I really like this book. I guess it goes without saying, if I listened to the whole thing twice and a few chapters, even more than that. And yeah, basically this guy is He's like an academic, I guess you could call him, or he was when he wrote this. I think he no longer is in academia. And throughout his like research and his journey with, hanging out with prepper types and like going all around the world, basically various countries, he basically like will answer to the name prepper, I guess, at this point. He got into it himself. He's got the bug out bags, as they call them. There's all kinds of prepper lingo. He's even like the beginning of this book has a acronym glossary, which is kind of funny. Some of these terms seem unnecessary. These acronyms. Just kind of looking through them now, but I'm getting sidetracked.
Feels like this is the main track, man. You're right where you should be.
Right. But just like some quick, like this guy was like an academic. He's by trade a geographer, which I was like, I didn't know you could beat that as a thing.
Sure.
I like geography. I liked geography since I was a kid. I didn't know that was like a career path.
Yeah. What kind of job are you getting, at this, in the big year of 2025, as the kids say? The kids don't say that anymore. Like, what geography job? But they do say that there is still a lot of the planet that we haven't really explored, We're just kind of like, we just like are assuming, but yeah, it's like, still, what is a geographer doing right now? That's over there.
I mean, there are like lots of like niche, disciplines within academia, and he specifically is like a cultural geographer, which sounds even more sort of niche and highfalutin. I mean, it basically means like he's just like studying people, and I guess in a way that's in relation to geography, to place, the way people relate to two places. So, and in this case, the places are bunkers largely. But I thought we could kind of go through some of the book and give our thoughts. And it's like not just about like if you've seen things like Doomsday Preppers, and like if you are aware of like the sort of stereotypes of people who, build bomb shelters in their yard or whatever, or, there's all kinds of like levels to prepping as well. And it's actually a more sort of varied subculture than a lot of people might expect just intuitively. But I got to stop looking at this actual book. I'm not thinking straight.
You're just trying to read the book more instead of doing the podcast. It's
I forgot what I was saying.
This is why I always say that you gotta not do books. It's dangerous. It's bad for you, and you've become addicted to book.
Yeah. I just lost my train of thought. Let me try to get it back here. All right.
All right. Back in it?
I think I was saying something about, preconceived notions about, like, a doomsday prepper, which I think within the prepping community is also kind of frowned upon as a term itself, doomsday prepping. They like the prepping part, but, I think it's just because, like, people have written this subculture off as like being paranoid and fringe and weird and irrational. And I guess my sense that I got after thinking about this stuff for the last 2 weeks with like some focus and reading this book is that these are maybe the most rational people in a lot of ways of all of us.
It's it's the thing where it's like they have the right idea, but the wrong prescription, I guess, would be the way to describe it, right? But yes, I agree with you in principle. And if you're like, moderately wealthy enough, like when they get into the stuff, especially like the Australian people or whatever, it's like, yes, but like the homespun, Cletus, who's got just like buckets of rip-off food from Joe Rogan's friend or whatever, obviously is doing the wrong thing. But yeah.
Yeah, and we can definitely get more into that as we go along. I mean, it's going to just inevitably keep coming up. But like I said, also, it's like, I think you can't even really, I did just do it. I just said these people are more rational. But it's also, there's a variety of types in here. Like there's a few guys. I think one guy, this is basically called Captain Paranoid. It comes up in one of the middle chapters, and there's a guy in I think the last chapter who it may actually just be like schizophrenic, possibly, but we can examine that more when we get there, I guess. But then there's some people who seem like pretty even keeled and are just like, yeah, this is like basically insurance, and it's not that insane to think that some kind of cataclysm could visit us because it's happened there's like historical precedent. So I think like in the previous episode, I did re-listen to it just because I didn't want to like repeat myself or whatever. But I think the main thing I was saying back then was, I guess, a little similar, but it was more like these weirdos that people are like gawking at on Doomsday Preppers, like the TV show, their anxieties are like based in reality, but yet like you were just basically saying, like maybe their reaction to it isn't necessarily the most sane, at least some of them.
Well,
but then there was like
not to say sane is obviously, it's like, you know, how do you be sane in an insane world or whatever? It's like, it's just not, it's not doing, like realpolitik or whatever. It's not doing like, you know, like it's not actually having effect, you know, it's not the most effective like way to deal with it is more the thing. There isn't really like a sane reaction because like there is no way to actually like sanely respond to the situation because it's an insane impracticality, you know, in either way. Sorry.
No, I think that's basically right. I mean, it depends on what we're talking about. Like, okay, like a sane way, like it depends on where you're coming from. I would say like a lot of people within the prepping community, again, painting with a broad brush, but they're not necessarily like really trying to fix, say, things through political channels. I would guess I didn't get that sense from the book, at least. It's people who are just like, the world is basically pretty fucked, and this is the most rational response to like wanting to survive whatever comes down the pike. Like, but then, I mean, I think a criticism you could give towards people putting all their efforts into just trying to survive like the impending doom is, well, you could be making the world better with like that time and money and effort, but you know, I mean, but once you make that split, like, and that fork in the road, I feel like if you're like, well, I mean, again, it depends on the specifics we're talking about. It's like, if we're talking about like, okay, nuclear war, the possibility of that, like, I don't know, what are the odds of like true, like global destruction from nuclear war? I don't know, but I also think that it's not that crazy to imagine that it could happen. But then something else like natural disasters, like things that are like utterly out of the control of human beings, I mean, then that's another layer. But then I guess maybe things like whatever, economic meltdown, just the structure of society, like that stuff, I guess you could say can be affected by people, but I don't know. I kind of like at this point don't really blame a lot of like people for kind of giving up on that and just being like, I got to protect my family. So time to go down into the bunker. But I don't know. I mean, these are the things I've been like thinking about over the last, couple of weeks. And I don't know. We can like try to work it out as we go through some of this stuff.
It's clearly a reactionary impulse, to like go with the prepper, like you said, go into the bunker with my family thing, right? It's like it's clearly like, going inward in the face of like a very negative situation. And it's like, obviously not helpful, it doesn't deal with like reality on reality's terms or whatever. It's like, It's just retreating to a fantasy world where you're somehow going to like prepare for the unpredictable eventuality of like everything falling apart or whatever, like, but yeah, it's like, again, like, I guess there's worse things that you could be doing with your time and energy or whatever. And then there's like, theoretically there's better things you could also do, but like what? And like you said, like, I mean, it's so tough to even think what you could really do. Although, I mean, I guess when you look at like Elon dumbass Eluma, like, him being the richest man in the world isn't the reason why he was able to influence everything as much as he was, Like, there was clearly like an infrastructure that built up around and this and that, but like, there's like close enough to a similar infrastructure with everything that you could be like looking for on the other side. And if you just had someone who was like rich enough, because it wasn't as if he used all of the money that he had to like get the outcome that he wanted or whatever.
Oh yeah, hardly any.
Yeah,
right?
So it's like someone who's just like rich, but doesn't have to be the richest guy on the planet, could do the same thing if they were just like willing to or whatever, to like really lean in. That's like what turns into the whole thing, because the real answer is basically an answer that even the like coolest in quotation marks capitalist is not going to agree with, because the final answer is like, we got to get rid of that part. Like, basically you got to have like, what is the thing that's like the patriotic millionaires or whatever? What the fuck is that? You know what I'm talking about? I forgot what they're called.
I can't remember.
The billionaires for higher taxes or whatever the fuck they call themselves. But like, you got to have the people that are more like they're like the suicidal billionaires or whatever. You know what I mean? Like the guillotine club, the people who are like, we're going to like end our existence to better the society or whatever. It's like, I don't think it's going to happen, because capital interest makes it impossible for the people with the money, as good-hearted as they can be. The nicest, most, lovable George Soros on the planet is not going to like sign his own death warrant and be like, I shouldn't be allowed to exist, as even if they're like really into it. And that's like what stops it from happening. But that's all of that walk around, is just to say like, I don't think that there's like a better use for the prepper people's money, really. Like, fuck it. Again, they're not like wasting it on something particularly bad, like, I mean, it's bad and it's stupid and it's wasteful, but it's just as bad as anything else,
Yeah, there was something mentioned in the book, I just remembered now thinking about it, where they mentioned like two people that show interest in like purchasing one of these bunkers, and one was like, I don't know, some sort of physical therapist or something, and then the other one, it was just described as a labor organizer. I was like, what kind of labor organizer is throwing down like 50 grand for a doomsday bunker? I don't know. It struck me as kind of strange, like,
right?
Because the only reason I just thought of that was because you were talking about the uses of this money going towards like whatever prepping stuff, and I was thinking like, like even just from a whatever, like just making the argument against it or whatever point of view, like what else could they be doing? And it was the first thing I thought was like, oh, they could be doing like organizing labor or whatever, trying to make the world a better place. And I just remembered one of these people was literally a labor organizer. I mean, it was like a passing thing in the book. It didn't like go into any real detail about it. But anyway, maybe getting into the book a little bit. So there's an introduction. It starts right off the bat with a quote from one of my favorite novelists in this book, which just like his reference to Vic Berger made me think, maybe this guy's pretty cool. He quotes Don DeLillo from one of his books saying, everybody wants to own the end of the world. Kind of a typical quote, profound seeming quote to start a book with. But anyway, Should set up also when he was writing this, the timing is really interesting, I thought, because he got some kind of like fellowship from Sydney fellowship from the University of Sydney in Australia in 2017, and the book didn't come out till 2020, like as the pandemic was in swing. So the timing is interesting because he's like writing this book for basically 3 years, and then this thing happens that all these people he's been meeting and thinking about for the last 3 years have been literally warning about, like specifically pandemics, like a global pandemic. And it like comes true as he's like in the final leg of writing his book. I just thought the timing was like, I mean, it's pretty good for him from like someone who maybe wants to sell a few copies of their books point of view. It's just, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a very like relevant time to put out a book about doomsday preparation. And he must have like gone back and like, cause there's like references to COVID throughout the book. It's not like a big thing, but he talks about it also like watching it unfold as he's writing the book. And, I just thought that was like an interesting little bit of, context.
Yeah.
But in the intro, I guess another thing about his background is before he started writing this book, one of the projects he worked on was like doing urban exploration, like, you know, people who like break into abandoned buildings and that kind of stuff, which strikes me as kind of a cool thing, honestly. I could see myself getting into that at some point, maybe. Or maybe I'm more just like the thought of it, but
is there a lot
very
of
opening?
Sorry, is there places that you think that you could do that in Korea though? Like,
yeah, I actually like I joined up like an urban explorer like website and just to see like what people had found in Seoul, and it's like kind of an old school forum style site where people just post like pictures and information about like sites they found, and I might start doing it. Like there's some places I saw in there that seem pretty cool, like some abandoned like areas from when the Olympics were in Seoul in the 80s and stuff like that.
Nice. There's like there's some stuff around here. This is like a place around here that went kind of viral recently. That was like an old like prison or a sane asylum or whatever. Anyways.
I like that. I like that whole kind of thing. Finding to use the cringe phrase we've made fun of a few times, liminal spaces, which also applies to like the world of bunkers and stuff in a way as well.
Right.
So the book opens with him describing breaking into this bunker in England, which is a pretty cool description because it's just like him and this small group of urban explorers breaking into this place. And it turns out to be like one of the largest bunkers like in the world, basically. It was built back in like the 40s, I want to say. But it's just this huge place. I think he describes it as 25 football fields in area. It was like big enough to hold like 4,000 people. It had like, it's just basically like an underground city, and it's just completely abandoned though now. Like since the 80s, maybe when England was like, I got a feeling we're gonna win this here Cold War. We don't really need this spot anymore. Anyway, I will say just as a general thing too, I like this guy's writing style. He has like a nice sense of a turn of phrase.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Every chapter starts with like kind of an interesting quote, and he's like, you know, referencing like writers and philosophers and stuff in an unpretentious way that I just found like was a nice extra little layer on top of the content itself. But yeah, the intro is just basically kind of an overview of like everything he's going to get into basically. And there's some like interesting historical asides. He goes a little bit deep into like the history of like just burrowing into the earth in general. It goes back pretty much as far as like human history does, more or less. It's kind of like waxing philosophical about the meaning of returning to the earth and stuff like that, and like referencing ancient cosmology about like 4 stages of the world. I think he's referencing like Hopi native tribe stuff, and But maybe moving on beyond the intro. Yeah, I gotta get over this urge where I want to just like share everything that I thought was cool about the book, because it's so much. I'm like scrolling by the huge number of highlights just in the intro itself. So I guess I just want to push the idea that people should check this book out. I thought it was really good. But then the first chapter is called The Dread Merchants, which is basically his word for like the capitalist class, I guess, that is trying to cash in on prepping stuff, particularly bunkers, but other things as well.
I guess I would say, like, I don't know if I consider it like capitalist class. It's more like the hucksters, you know, it's the salesmen. It's like you talked about earlier. It's like Joe Rogan. Like, I don't know that like maybe Joe Rogan like kind of pushes the limit of it or whatever, but like Joe Rogan is still like kind of weirdly technically not like a capitalist, you know, in like the
does he not own capital
sense. He has capital, but he doesn't use his capital to make money. I guess he kind of does, but like he is more similar to like Alex Jones, where the thing is like their main source of income is directly selling bullshit to rubes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not the same thing where like you make money from having money, right? It's like it's slightly different. Again, it's like it's snake oil salesman.
I got you. You're right to call out my use of capitalist class there. I didn't mean it so much literally as just... Sorry. This is more lower level. These are not... It's not billionaires that are selling bunkers to people. You're right.
Well, it's very silly because it's not even necessarily... It doesn't always have to do with how much money you have. It really has to do with like personality types. Because like I said... Someone like Joe Rogan absolutely could just be a capitalist at this point. He has enough money. But he's got this weird personality where it's very important to him to do the direct sales thing, you know? And there's freaks who just have that, like, that's built into them, you know? But it doesn't change how much, like, you know, how much wealth they have or whatever.
So... This chapter basically opens with him going to this place in South Dakota, which is like a bunker community, I guess you could call it. It's 575 concrete bunkers that were originally built for military uses, I think mainly just to store weapons. It had nothing to do with protecting people. But of course, a lot of these places have been like decommissioned since the 40s and 50s when they were being used. Now it's just owned by this colorful character that enters stage right. Robert Vicino, I think is how you say his name. Yes, Vicino, described here as a California developer who is interested in... He actually comes into the book because he was interested in buying that huge bunker in England, but didn't end up doing that. But that's how I think the author kind of discovered who he was initially. But he's the CEO of the Vivos group, Vivos company, Vivos, whatever.
Yeah, in the book, in the audiobook, they were saying like Vivos. But it was it was weird the way that he said it. It was very like it was taking me a while to understand what the fuck he was trying to say.
Vicino owns Vivos, we'll say. And he owns this place, which he's named X Point. And yeah, it's like this kind of vast plot of land with, like I said, 575 individual bunkers for sale, I think starting at 25,000 piece. But what's kind of interesting about this place is that it is like sort of more of a community. It's not just like an individual. I mean, they're like separated. They're not like even connected, but they're all like, it would be a bunch of people all living there together. He said there's like enough space for, what did he say? Like 10,000 families. But as the author's there, he's saying like he doesn't really see much going on. Like I think ultimately he meets just like maybe like a dozen people that actually own bunkers or were interested in buying them, because he's basically there to attend X Fest at X Point, which this guy Vicino is like hyping up to him, is like, you got to come out, and he's like inviting like preppers from all around the world, and like basically it's a huge like flop. Like hardly anyone shows up. But he also describes his first meeting with this guy. I think they're meeting in California, though. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, they meet at a Starbucks. I'll just read a couple bits here from meeting this guy because he's a real personality. At Starbucks, Vicino put on a big personality to match his 6'8" stature. He picked up other people's babies, joshed the teenager bagging bagels with tongs, and ogled every woman who passed by, rating them a 7, a 2, a 9. He bought me lunch, and as we settled into some chairs outside, he wasted no time into getting down to brass tacks. "What do you know about Planet X, Brad?" "Nibiru," Vicino said, leaning back with expansive authority. "Can't say I've heard of it." He slammed forward in his chair. "Wowee, you're a researcher and you don't know about Nibiru? Looks like you need to go back to school." So Nibiru or Planet X is supposed to be this like giant planet that, there's some conspiracy theory ideas, I guess, that, I don't know, it's going to slam into the Earth or pass by the Earth and cause like a pole shift.
Sure.
Which is one of the more out there theories that some people prep for, I would say. Like the poles of the Earth just, I don't even quite understand the idea, but it's supposed to just create like, as it says here in the book, a 3,000 mile high tidal wave that would, quote, reset the planet.
Seems
I think the other
realistic.
thing I remember about this Vicino guy is that his email signature is something to the effect of like, "People thought Noah was crazy before the flood," or something like that.
That's true. That guy from the made up book thing happened, and that's the same as this. And don't I feel stupid that you said that?
I kind of wanted to like push back a little bit on like stereotypes about the like preppers or whatever, but this guy like right off the bat in their conversation just says like apropos of nothing, "Did you know that a third of Swedish women have been raped by Muslims? It's a mess out there." And then he just goes back to talking about comets and pole flips and stuff. So this guy is more sort of along the lines of I don't know, the stereotype, but he again, this guy is more of just the con man, the snake oil salesman, just trying to make a buck. He's also like, he's a fancy lad California guy. He's like, he lives in like Del Mar or, somewhere down there,
right.
San Diego way. He's not the guy with the camo gear or whatever, like stacking up his buckets of food. He's more the few notches up on the ladder of finance, moving and shaking. But like part of his whole sales pitch is freaking people out with ideas of, how things will end. And he's got, I think the first place he built a bunker was like Indiana, which I think in the last chapter is when the author goes there and hangs out with a guy who might actually be like schizophrenic or something, was going through some actual mental health stuff. But he's also got, the thing I kept noticing in this book is like, you got to really pay attention to whether something exists or whether or not these businessmen, these dread merchants, just have made plans for something to exist. Most of the things tend to just be plans that have like not even step one started. So he's like, he talks like it's already like in the process, but it's just like an idea. It's like he had an idea for Vivos Asiana, which was where he wanted to build a bunker in Seoul, where I am, and the idea was to store 3 drops of blood from every Korean person in this bunker as a way that they could potentially clone themselves, like after people crawl out of the ashes of the cataclysm. I'm pretty sure since 2020 that idea has not come to pass. And yeah, he has like Vivos Europa. But it was just an idea that failed about like building some sort of bunker for like BMW and Mercedes executives. Like, anyway, there's like a fair amount of like sort of typical con artistry stuff going on with this guy, Vicino. What's his name?
Yeah.
The author comes up with this. He lays out the difference between like fear and dread, which I think was kind of interesting. Seems sort of useful when I don't know, like digging into like the psychology of prepping a little bit, but it's basically just like, he's like referencing Kierkegaard and shit, but like basically it's just the idea of like dread as a more like unfocused fear or anxiety. Yeah, I thought that was interesting, but again, I can't just start reading everything from the book.
No.
Because that will take forever.
Also, like, people should just read the book for that.
Agreed. There's also kind of a distinction between survivalists and preppers. He doesn't really get too much into in the book, but I was kind of researching a little bit. Do you remember anything much about that?
Well, I mean, I know about it even before like you talked about it in the book.
Oh, okay,
I'm, like,
sure.
familiar with both things, but yeah, like I guess I could reference it and then also like reference it in context of what he says or whatever, I guess. But yeah, like it's obviously there's a big difference, right? Because preppers are looking for a way to basically stay where they are. They're trying to like protect the home base and keep themselves where they're at. Survivalists are trying to like be prepared to like go out into the world. That's like the difference, right? Survivalists, like, they do their thing by going camping, and climbing mountains and being active and being out, while as like preppers are like trying to fortify the home base and doing nothing. And it is, I mean, when you look at it like at the basic like politics, scale, like I said, the prepper instinct is like a natural, or it's like an obvious like reactionary kind of politic at its core, whereas like the survivalist is a lot more progressive, I guess I would say, moving forward, looking for the next thing and being a lot more adaptive.
Yeah, I think like the survivalist is more interested in like developing skills that can make them like self-sufficient, learning how to like grow food or like hunt or whatever, like with very little materials. And maybe the difference would be like a prepper just buys a bunch of canned food.
Sure, I mean that's like, it feels like a bit of a didactic way to describe it, but I get what you mean. Or I should say reductive, I guess. But either way, like, the idea, they're like fortifying the base or whatever. Rather, again, it's like, it's capitalist, right? It is like, in a weird way, it is capitalist. It's like having something creates value as opposed to like being able to do something creating value, right? So it's like, it's proletariat versus capitalist or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I mean by like it's more about developing skills to where you don't really need to rely on anything civilization has to offer. Basically, it's a more thorough rejection of civilization to be a survivalist. I think is what I gathered in my little bit of note taking. But yeah, I mean the book is more focused on, I guess, what would just be called preppers anyway. But sometimes the words get interchanged, and I guess that's not the most accurate way to talk about them. So it's really the only reason for that little aside there. I mean, this connects us to the news, right? FEMA, like the kind of universal hatred of FEMA. What is it? Federal Emergency Management Agency. Yeah. There was something, I'm not going to be able to find it now, but there was like a mocking retread of that acronym by the preppers in the book. I wish I could remember it. I feel like, let's see. I found it right away. What do you know? Someone told the author, many preppers say FEMA stands for foolishly expecting meaningful aid. That was it. And I thought that was interesting because at the very least, the sort of, there's maybe a uniquely American form of prepping culture seems to come out of like the, I don't know, increasingly being told by the government, by everyone in society in America that you're on your fucking own, basically. That has, if there has been actually an uptick in prepping, which I think there has been, it's partially because of that.
Yeah. I was just saying, like an uptick from nothing, right? It's like from nothing to something, I guess, or whatever. Either way.
Well, I mean, there was like a boom in the 50s and 60s of people installing bomb shelters, and it was seen as like actually a kind of a not crazy person thing to do back then. But then as time marched on, it's seen as stranger and more fringe. And I feel like it's possible that maybe it will become possibly more accepted as, I don't know, in the near future to prep in some ways, but maybe not. I don't know. So, I mean, I guess on that subject and the idea of like governments or states doing any sort of prepping or a civilian defense, I think is what it's called. The second chapter is geological deterrence, prepping like a state. And it gets into some of the history of nations actually creating infrastructure and bunkers, like the one referenced in England. And I think it's kind of interesting that in the US, there's been basically no attempt to really reach out and help the average citizen with stuff like this, but the government will still tell you that they recommend that you keep a certain amount of like canned food or whatever on hand at all times in case of emergencies, and you'll be sort of fear-mongered about all sorts of threats, but there's no helping hand lent by the government here, or in the US, I should say. But he gives all kinds of examples. And I think maybe the most striking example to me was in Sweden and Finland and Switzerland. I'll just read this little bit I marked down here. He says, elsewhere, civil defense programs went beyond the creation of bunker space for the elite few, which is what has happened, all around the world in Soviet Union, modern day Russian Federation, in the US. There are definitely bunkers for like government people for the elite few, and made attempts to build shelters for every citizen. These programs are still maintained today, at least by some countries. Sweden maintains space in nuclear, biological, and or chemical filtered bunkers for 70% of its residents, though the structures have never been used in war. In 2018, the Swedish government triggered minor nationwide hysteria when they sent pamphlets to each of the country's 4.8 million households, reminding them where shelters were and telling them how to prepare for an enemy attack. Next door in Finland, for decades, the country has been hoarding medical supplies, oil, food, tools, and raw materials to make ammunition. When COVID-19 struck, the Finnish government tapped the stockpile for the first time since World War II and found it to be in superabundance, earning Finland the title of Prepper Nation. And then going even further than both of those countries, I think, he says, meanwhile, in Switzerland, a 1963 law still in place dictates that every citizen has access to a nuclear bunker. As of 2016, there was a bunker space for 8.6 million individuals, 5,000 public shelters, and more than 300,000 private bunkers in a country of less than 8.4 million, just in case tourists are in town, I suppose. So just a stark contrast. I mean, also you can point out that those countries have way, way, way fewer people than the United States, but it still struck me as kind of interesting. He also goes on to say that the most bunkered place on Earth is North Korea, which I found kind of interesting. He doesn't get into how he knows that. I mean, there's like citations and stuff. I mean, I didn't follow it up, but the only reason I was even sort of suspicious of the claim is that you'd think a lot of that stuff is like classified and unknown, but which is another thing that comes up in the book a lot, is the idea of OPSEC, operation security, when it comes to building bunkers, because the idea is like no one should know that the bunker is even there. And there's several examples of times when like a location has been publicized by like a newspaper or something, and then that area is abandoned as a place to build a bunker or like maintain one. I think he gives an example at some point in the book of a guy, just like a person like on their own land, like with their house, wanted to build a bunker. And so they paid for their neighbors to go on like a vacation. They're just like, hey, you're a nice neighbor. Here's an all paid vacation. Get out of here. Get out of town for a weekend or whatever, a week. And then they dug and installed a bunker with, their neighbors being none the wiser.
Oh yeah, that was a interesting, weird anecdote about. Could you imagine your neighbor paying for a vacation for you, and you're just like, oh, cool. Oh, that was nice of them. We're just gonna leave. Like, what the fuck? Like, seems insane. Well, whatever.
I don't know. What were some of the highlights for you about this book? And it's a broad question.
Like I was saying, like I thought the stuff that stood out the most was like the Australia stuff, just because it was, interesting, I guess. But just like in a real, like just in a weird, like anecdotal, like slice of life, like, oh, it's different over there, like that kind of thing was like cool. And then like the space, and then just everything, and then talking about like the bunkers that were built as like kind of like they knew that they were like suicide factories or whatever. Like you're gonna lock yourself in and you're gonna basically just die. Like you can't really last in there or whatever. It can give you a couple hours, but they don't necessarily present it that way or whatever. But yeah, I otherwise like, I don't know. Like that was kind of it,
I think the chapter on Australia is the one I kind of remember the least. The thing I remember the most about it was that, like, I think around the time he was writing the book was when there were those like really, really widespread, intense wildfires there, and that was like a big reason for a lot of the prepping lifestyle in Australia. If I'm remembering right, I think some of the bunkers were specifically like built to quickly, just make yourself safe from wildfires that would just like rip through your house, basically. I feel like there's a description of one of the bunkers, at least in Australia, that was like, it was like, there was like a clear, like you could actually like see, maybe I dreamt this, but I have this image in my mind of like people being below the earth, but there being like some sort of glass ability to like see up through to the surface. Maybe I totally imagine that, but I don't know why that's like a really vivid image in my mind when I'm thinking about the Australia chapter. Yeah, he travels around the world a bit. He goes to Thailand, but like in Thailand, he's just really visiting one particular like expat from Canada who's been living in Thailand. And I don't know, I thought that was actually one of the less interesting chapters, I guess. Like I thought it would be more, I mean, there's some interesting stuff like you're saying about like, hey, I'm not from there. And like you learn a little bit about what's going on in Thailand.
Oh, what's it like? What's it like to be an idiot in a different country? Oh, cool.
Yeah. There's Captain Paranoid. That guy is basically had like sort of an Airbnb style like series of bunkers he was renting out to like, but the funny part about that was I forget where that was, in Colorado. Yeah, Fortitude Ranch in Colorado. It's like a former Air Force colonel, this guy Drew Miller, who he calls Captain Paranoid because I think one of the guys like ranch hands referred to him as that. He's like, I'm not really into that stuff like Captain Paranoid is, but that guy was also a bit of a colorful character, we'll say. But yeah, the thing about him like renting it was basically just like I said, an Airbnb, but with like these bunkers. And the writer said he like talked to some of the people, and they were like tourists from like other countries outside of the US. But they were going there not even realizing like it was a prepping place, like with bunkers. They just thought it was like an interesting bed and breakfast or something, which I thought that was kind of funny to just like accidentally find yourself on like a prepper ranch. I don't know how that's even possible, but where else? There's this whole chapter about Texas, this place in Texas. This is, again, it turns out to be just like a total scam, like non-existent place that's only exists in terms of like CGI pictures of what it could look like.
Yeah, that was another cool one. There's so many good ones like that, or like throughout the book where it's like, yeah, it's just like, it's fucking insane because it's, again, these are people who are already clearly like at like in a weird space, whatever you want to say. And then like just the people who are like only like 5 or 6 degrees more sane than them that are just like, I'm gonna scam these people, but they also are like still in it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, that's like part of the whole thing that's like kind of crazy. You know, it's like Avon or something. You know, it's like an MLM where it's like you're getting scammed by someone who's also like scammed. You know, they're only like slightly above you, but they're also getting scammed. It's nuts how much of this is like MLMs. Like, it feels like an MLM, but it's like the weirdest part about it is it's not an MLM or whatever, just because like it doesn't have like the structure. You know, it's like it's scammers scamming scammers, but there's no like top boss who actually set the whole thing up. There's no Paul Bet Davidson at the top. You know, there's just like, it's naturally occurring crabs in a bucket style scamming each other. You know.
Yeah, and at the I think maybe the conclusion chapter of the whole book, he kind of updates some of these people, and the people in Texas, the place was called Trident Lakes, and the descriptions of him going there are kind of interesting because it's just like there are these like Greek and Roman antiquity style like statues everywhere, and there's just a bunch of statues and shit and like water fountains and stuff, but there's no actual fortified housing, which this is like the whole plan is like. So they're basically just like getting investment and trying to, and at one point they go through like the applicants who are trying to like get into this place that they haven't even broken ground on yet, this Trident Lakes place. But like I was saying, in the conclusion of the book, he updates the people behind this, and at least one of them, I think, ends up in jail for all various fraud type crimes. And yeah, the whole thing just amounted to nothing in the long run or whatever. And that happens at least one more time with a guy. There's this other company called, I want to say it's called Hardened Structures. And they're maybe the king of the scam people in the book, because they just keep like stringing the writer Bradley along like multiple times. He like kind of falls for their shit, and like, why wouldn't he? Like, he's also like researching these places. Like, he's gonna, if people tell him there's a place that you can see, like, he's gonna try to check it out. But like multiple times, it results in just like nothing. Like, there's like the address doesn't even exist. Which reminds me of another thing I saw when I was just looking generally at like bunker places. Yeah, there's this like shitty men's magazine called mensxp.com, and they have an article, the 6 most expensive and luxurious doomsday bunkers in the world that make complete sense, RN, which was written in April 2020. And they're just, they're the number one slot, the Oppidum is called, Oppidum. This was one of the places that gets brought up in the book as being one of the projects from this Hardened Structures company. It doesn't exist. It just is totally non-existent. There's a picture of like a swimming pool and like, but it just doesn't exist. It is total smoke and mirrors shit. And they're also referencing the Vivos Europa 1. That's the one I talked about already in Germany that doesn't exist. It's just like bad Photoshop, kind of like, I guess this is before like the ascendance of AI art, but it might as well, it could just be like bad AI Photoshop style art. But yeah, that's the case with a lot of these places. But then I guess that leads us to one of the chapters I found most interesting, which made everything sort of come full circle to that old podcast episode from 2020 or whenever it was, 2021, where I read a bunch of this article in The Guardian about this luxury bunker. What's the actual wording of it? Yeah, the article 4 years ago. Weapons rooms, fake windows, and a $3 million price tag inside a luxury doomsday bunker. So when I got to this chapter in the book, the very beginning of it, I'm like, hey, this sounds familiar. And it literally is the same. It's the guy who wrote this book, like, wrote this article for The Guardian. And it's basically like the sort of abridged version of this chapter on the Survival Condo. That's the official name of this place. Survival Condo, owned by this Again, another sort of colorful character, Larry Hall. I think he's described as a hulking Willy Wonka at some point in the book. So this is one of the few places that actually exists that you can like go on YouTube and which I did. I watched some videos of him giving the tour of this place. He bought like this abandoned nuclear missile silo and turned it into this, like, as it's described in the book, as an inverted skyscraper, which he calls a geoscraper.
Yeah.
Which is kind of annoying, but kind
cool.
of funny.
I like it.
Yeah.
Cool.
But so if you want, like, so I'm not even really going to get into like the details of it because it was talked about on the podcast before, but that was kind of smacking my forehead moments. Like, wow, it's all coming together. This thing that I started 4 years ago. Now I'm reading this guy's whole book. It's actually kind of cool. I think I said on that episode that if I had the money, I would probably invest in an apartment in the geoscraper because it seemed pretty nice.
Yeah.
And just from a pure like engineer, like I don't know, admiring like the feats of engineering abilities. It's kind of interesting in that way, as is like a lot of this stuff to me. But yeah, so it's not all snake oil and cons all the way down. Like this Larry Hall guy did actually create this pretty impressive thing out of, I mean, it's also very interesting that you're like hiding from the product, like the potential products of nuclear war in a place that was once built just to house a nuclear warhead.
Right.
But yeah, that chapter is very interesting, and I would recommend even checking out the videos of the place. So the survival condo, one of the sort of outlier chapters is called chapter 10, the anti-bunker, bloom where you're planted. And that's where he's interviewing these like, I think at one point they described themselves as like, what, you never seen feisty middle-aged ladies doing prepping shit or something like that.
Yeah.
Because that's who they are. I think they opened some kind of, it's interesting because it's like the prepping. It's like, it's a different version of the prepping thing where they explicitly reject the idea of like hiding in bunkers, and like they're basically saying like if things get bad enough to where you can only survive by being in a bunker, they don't want to be alive at that point, because it's just going to be like this Mad Max, whatever, post-apocalyptic hell where, you know. But they're prepping for like lower level cataclysm, I guess, where they're doing like urban farming and like mutual aid and stuff that's like, it's kind of interesting too in this book is like, there's a lot of stuff that's like very sort of leftist coded, I guess you could say.
Sure.
I gotta stop just using the word coded. It's about as played as liminal spaces, but
sure.
You know what I mean? Which I found that interesting. Like it's in terms of like pushing against like the kind of disparaging stereotypes of whatever the prepping subculture. Did you get to the chapter on PrepperCon, the Prepper Convention?
I don't think so.
That was a good one. And I did a little bit of digging on. I found, like, before I even found the book, I did find PrepperCon, like some videos. But I think the most interesting and also very depressing part of the chapter on PrepperCon is where, and this was something I think we covered on the podcast again, like years ago. I remember this story where people created bulletproof backpacks because of how common school shootings are in the United States. And he goes into a whole aside on like, there's a whole industry around like, I guess this was especially during, I don't know, Trump 1.0, where there were people like lobbying and stuff to like basically shooter proof, in scare quotes, schools with inventions like bulletproof backpacks and like hardened architecture, as it's called. And so I thought that was fascinating, depressing, of course, but you know. But then there's some other bits of that chapter are just really kind of funny, like just these kind of eccentric people selling their weird contraptions and whatnot. the largest prepper convention on Earth. I think that was also that overlapped with his chapter on Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormon folk, who also were very like when I would have thought of like survival bunkers and whatever, like prepping culture, I would have thought of it as like a very sort of individualistic thing, which it is in a lot of cases. But that's what's interesting. One of the things that's interesting about this book is like when he goes to hang out with like the Mormon preppers, it's like much more sort of community minded. But then so are like a bunch of these people, like, which I don't know, again, goes against sort of the stereotype, which I found interesting to consider. There's a whole chapter on mobile bunkers, which is something I wouldn't have thought of. I swear he mentioned something in the book that I can't take the time to look into now, but it just popped into my mind of, it was like, he said, I swear to God, it was like underwater. It just sounded like a weird way of saying submarine, but he didn't use the word submarine. It was like underwater yacht bunkers or something like that. But anyway, maybe this is more a note to self for me to look into that again, because I was curious about that. But it just kind of passed me by quickly. Yeah, then the very, like, basically the last proper chapter is when he goes to that Vivos bunker, because it's one of the only actual bunkers made by this Vivos company, aside from the big bunker community in South Dakota. And he hangs out for like a couple days with this weird guy named Blake, I think, who also goes against the sort of stereotypes of preppers. He's like a younger guy who just seems like kind of a, I don't know, like, you know, he's not like a right wing, you know, my guns, whatever kind of guy. He's like slightly more hip coded than that or something. But then as the chapter goes on, he reveals himself to like have some pretty unhinged ideas. And then in the conclusion chapter, he says like, he like, I don't know, talked to some people who knew him or something, and maybe he's actually going through something. But there was a particular description that stood out to me of that guy that I want to find again. Yes. So he's basically like getting drunk with this guy one night, and he says, he explained to me that when it snowed, the snow longer melted. If examined under an electron microscope, the snow would reveal a structure full of tiny cyborgs made from red blood cells. These bots, he continued, were crafted by the government from donated blood and are sometimes visible as a shimmer in clouds at dusk. And yeah, it goes on to say they're controlled by, what is it called? HAARP, HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program in Alaska. Anyway, that sounds like pretty standard, like just actual schizophrenia. But
yeah,
I remember that leaping out to me.
That's the other part about this that's kind of tough, is like the amount of people where you're kind of like, oh, I think these people are actually mentally, you know, unwell in different ways. So like, even though it is fun and funny, it's also like sort of fucked up, you know? But yeah.
Yeah, which I will say, to like, the author handles well. He's not, I want to stress that he's like not exploiting these people at all, and actually gives them a lot of credit. And like I said, he basically becomes a prepper, like in his real life. Like he,
right. Well, I thought he kind of went into it already like a prepper, or was I wrong?
He was like open-minded, I guess, but he said he had a lot of similar sort of like dismissive ideas about like, oh, they're just like cranks or whatever. But no, like part of the book is like his sort of psychological journey through the whole thing itself. And then there's like a really good conclusion chapter, which I want to read like the very last couple of paragraphs from, just to close out. But before I even do that, I want to mention there's a coda, which at the very beginning of the book, he puts a disclaimer saying that the research grant that he got, I think he's just trying to like cover the university's ass or something, because he says like, the thing that I did in the coda was purely on my own and had nothing to do with the money I got from the university in Australia, because he basically breaks into the Chernobyl Ground Zero site in the Coda chapter, which is really cool.
Nice.
And it's just like this interesting, sort of meditation on cataclysm and all that stuff. But it's also just like kind of adventure writing a little bit in a way. And I learned stuff about Chernobyl, basic stuff that I just didn't know because I don't know. It's just maybe a historical blind spot for me. I never watched the TV show either. I did not realize that all of that nuclear energy is just like humming beneath a bunch of concrete and will be there for like 10,000 years. Yeah. Somehow I missed that in my public education.
Sure.
But I guess, do you have any like kind of final thoughts? I guess we should wrap it up. And I just want to, like I said, I want to read the last couple paragraphs because I just thought he closed it out really well. But any last words?
No, feel free to just close it out.
Yeah, like as I was finishing the book for the first time, I was also doing other shit on the internet, and I saw some very sort of like doomer posts on Reddit about like everything's fucked up, and it was like simultaneously while reading the very last like page of this book, and I copy and pasted it as a response to somebody kind of like losing their shit about doomer things to reductively set it aside, and I thought I should just read it because it sums up the book really well and a lot of thoughts about, end times, preparation, all that stuff. Here goes. Subterranean space is an ancient sanctuary. The underground has been our place of protection for thousands of years. Never before in recorded history has humankind faced such grave and myriad existential threats. We've also never had such a clear window into those threats, or so much personal capacity to take shelter against them. Retreating into our bunkers, even just as a metaphor for confronting our dread of the unknown, will be necessary to escape the traps we've laid for ourselves. The survivors of the next catastrophe might very well end up being a peculiar mix of government officials, Mormons, self-sufficient indigenous communities, off-gridders, doomsday preppers, and people who happened to be at sea or in space. The human story to date is that we are smart enough to dominate our habitat and then engineer our own destruction. The next chapter of that story will be about whether we're smart enough to engineer our survival. Looking past the dread wrought by dangers like atomic weapons, runaway technological advancement, and climate change is our greatest challenge. But there's hope to hang on to. Human beings collectively are living longer than at any time in history, and high-casualty global wars haven't been fought in decades. Many diseases, including other coronavirus strains like SARS and MERS, that could have been catastrophic, have been caught early and quarantined or quelled because of international cooperation. For the first time in history, food is abundant, even if it is, like wealth, unevenly distributed, owing to a lack of political will. The connectivity and speed of the modern age is still paying dividends in terms of quality of life, even if an aging, technologically dependent, and largely urban population is a double-edged sword for the planet and our psyche. As an ethnographer, a culture writer, I can't help but feel that as adaptation overtakes mitigation in the debate over future crises, preppers may play an important role in understanding how people will respond to rising frustration and despair. In my own search for answers to this sluggish apocalypse, I've been forced to be realistic in confronting notions of perishing, finitude, and fragility. This process has filled me with at least as much wonder as dread, and more political energy than resignation. And it's forced me to realize that prepping is practical, communities are crucial, and disasters aren't ends but irreversible transitions. Significant events are sometimes catastrophic, sometimes tragic and cruel, and sometimes generative. However, they're always something less than an extinction. Catastrophe, by its very nature, falls short of finality. It's the end of something, but never the end. As Robert Vicino once told me, This is not a story about concrete or steel or a giant fountain. It's a story about survival and rebirth. It's a story that has played out repeatedly over human history. Though the threats we face may have changed, hunkering down to chart a course through turbulent times remains a vital practice for survival, a lesson I learned in my journeys with preppers. The most valuable lesson they taught me, however, was about the futility of succumbing to despair. Their preparations may have appeared irrational only a short time ago, and we may still query their motivations, but we no longer have the luxury of being dismissive of their concerns. The time to hunker down and outthink extinction is upon us again. All right, that's Bradley Garrett and his book Bunker.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Building for End Times.
It's a pretty good book and has like pretty good insights in general and stuff. It's, there is some stuff like that. It feels, I don't know how to put it, like well-worn territory or whatever, but that doesn't make it less true or whatever,
Yeah, he's not like reinventing the wheel by any means, but it's almost more like the combination of topics was more unique to me than like any particular insights or anything. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, as I've said many times now. And I recommend it. Speaking of recommendations, that's one of my official recommendations of the week, but I also would throw in the following. Yes, I recommend the book. I recommend a movie called 10 Cloverfield Lane. Did you ever see that one?
I did not. I know it's got Lizzie Chapman in it, which makes me... Oh, wait, no, that's not the right one. No, I've not seen it.
Who's Lizzie Chapman?
She's from Party Down and stuff. She was in that movie that's called Cloverfield, the one that's like a monster kaiju kind of thing. It's a different.
I know the girl you're talking about. I just feel like, are you sure that's her name? It's Lizzie something. Is it Chapman?
Yeah.
Kaplan. I knew.
Yeah.
No, this movie has a different pretty actress in it, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. But it's a very good movie, and basically the entire movie takes place in a survivalist style, prepper style bunker owned by a character played by John Goodman. And yeah, it's like two, sometimes three people, all who don't know each other, somehow have ended up in this bunker because something really bad is happening on the surface. And it's just a really good, like, sort of psychological thriller style movie. And I've never seen the first Cloverfield movie. It never really appealed to me that much, but the Bunker Adventure spiritual sequel or whatever is really good. I recommend it. And I'll also quickly recommend another book, 2 books this week, going crazy, called Blueprints of the Afterlife, which doesn't have anything really directly to do with prepping, but it has to do with sort of end times stuff in a way. It's hard to describe really well, but it's kind of an America post climate disaster, but it's also very humorous and unique and interesting, and sort of in the tradition of postmodern fiction, I guess you could say, to put a groaning title on it. But it's an underappreciated book that I really liked when I first read it back in 2012, and I want to reread it soon, actually. Blueprints of the Afterlife by a guy named Ryan Boudinot. Check out all 3 of those things in whatever order. Tim, you got anything you want to recommend?
Yeah, I watched this movie called Baby Girl, starring Nicole Kidman. It was kind of interesting. I think looking back on it kind of helped like develop a bit of a like, I don't know how to put it exactly, maybe like capital class kind of statement to it or whatever, you know. There was like something, you know, being like having like politics or whatever like message to it in the background. It was kind of interesting in that regard. It's kind of interesting just like in general, you know. It was fun to watch or whatever. But yeah, I would definitely say check it out. It's like, it's kind of weird, it's kind of off-putting in some ways, but I think it actually does have like a message there if you like, you know, take the time to think about it, break it down or whatever. So yeah, it was pretty fun. Interesting.
I see it listed here as an erotic thriller, which I hear those are back. I hear there's nostalgia, or there's a revival of the 90s erotic thriller. Does it fit into that mold? I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. It just calls it an erotic thriller.
Yeah, no, definitely. That is probably the best way to describe it.
A24. It's got that A24 gloss. It looks like.
Know it. Yeah.
It sounds good. I like Nicole Kidman. I like, who else we got here? Antonio Banderas. He's got that young guy from Triangle of Sadness, whose name I don't know, but I see him there.
Okay. I knew him from like
Harris Dickinson.
Yeah. I knew him from something else because I haven't seen that. I haven't seen Triangle of Sadness. I should probably check that out, to be honest.
I liked it. I know some people didn't. I thought it was good. All right. That's the end of the episode. Go to the episode description. Click on the link to our Discord server. Join the Discord server. Say hi. If you already have joined the Discord server, continue saying things there. Post to your heart's content.
Yeah, don't ever stop posting.
Never stop posting. This is the only rule to live by. And you should also check out Tim's other podcast, which is...
You should subscribe on Patreon. No, you should check out my other podcast. It's called Q&TR. We've been doing good. We've done a podcast every week for like a month straight. But this time for sure, I know last time I said maybe, there's going to be an interruption. For sure, I can feel it. This time for sure there's going to be an interruption because I'm going to be in Arizona over the weekend. Like from recording time tomorrow. When you're listening to this, I'll probably already be back home. But probably be behind on an episode. We'll see. Maybe somehow we'll still have an episode. But either way, that's not the point. The point is just plugging it and saying it's called Q&TR, kind of. It's on the Violent People website podcast network. You can check that website at violentpeople.co. And you could, I guess, buy a mug. I don't know what they want me to say. Either way, check it out.
You know, every time you like reluctantly say that your podcast has a name, I keep going back and forth on like, is this like actually ultimately kind of a savvy way to plug your podcast? Because it's so weird. I've never heard anyone ever say before. Sure. But because I remember hearing you on the Boomer Death Squad as a guest, and I was so confused. Like I was like, I want to look up this guy's other podcast, or Soul podcast, I guess at the time. And I was so confused for a long time until I think you joined this podcast and you were like, there's just not really an official name.
Yeah.
But it made me want to know more. But then it also kind of like, I don't know, it was like slightly frustrating in a way. Because it's like, how can a podcast not have a name?
Well, why does it have to? Like, how can it not? That was the whole point from the beginning. I said, like, there's no rule that says it has to, you know? You just take it as a given.
When you look at like the actual, like you subscribe and you're like scrolling through the episodes and there's no consistent name from episode to episode, it's like, oh, is this like a thing where the name is just the title of the episode each week?
Basically.
And that's basically what it is, right? But you do actually have a name now. I think at one point you didn't even have Q&TR, right?
Yeah, well, like from the beginning, the idea was the preamble of the episode is this week QNTR.
Right.
Title of the
Okay,
episode.
right.
That is what we are. Right. So it's kind of like a default. It's like a default. That is the name of the show because that's what it is. You know,
Right.
That's the preamble. So yeah. Either way. And then, yeah, it's like, when we join like a network that officially exists or whatever, it's like kind of like more like you have to have a name, I guess. I don't know how that worked exactly, but yeah, either way.
I was just thinking in terms of like when you upload a podcast episode, there's like a space that must be filled out for the name
title.
of yeah. So in the past, you would just put the episode title as the official title of the show. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right. And as Ryan Boudinot always wrote in the 2012 novel Blueprints of the Afterlife, anytime things were going right for you, the future of the world seemed bright. Anytime they were going wrong, the imminent collapse of civilization was at hand. Can't you see how thoroughly you projected your own subjective vision of reality on the world? No, I can't. Good night, good luck, good morning, Vietnam.
The first voice recording was made in 1860. It was a 10-second fragment of the French folk song Au clair de la lune recorded by inventor Edward Leon Scott de Martinville. But who will make the final voice recording and when? What will it be? Who will hear it?